So, what strategies do you find most effective for grabbing students' attentions at the start of a lesson?
Oh, at the start of a lesson?
Yeah.
Um, probably directly relating whatever the topic is to the student's existence or livelihood. Um, so say like today I talked about language, and so I openly asked if any students were bilingual, so then I could go into the idea that your language, in some parts, your language uh, makes you perceive things differently depending on the language you think in. So for people that are bilingual, that they might come up with a different solution if they think of a problem depending on the language they think it in. So if you speak Spanish and you speak English, you might come up with a different solution if you think of it in Spanish than you would in English. To which, that's how I started the lecture off with that to kind of show how that might happen and how that takes place. And it takes place in students, so that other students can see that it's not this ethereal, esoteric concept that is literally happening to an individual in the room right now.
So like a connection.
Yeah. Long story short, a connection. Yeah.
All right. How do you balance lecturing with interactive activities to keep everyone involved?
That's both a simple. I have a simple and a complex answer for that. The simple one is that.
I would love to take the simple one.
Well, the complex one is just that I'm not a big fan of class activities, so I didn't tend to do class activities.
Okay.
Now, the simple one is that I just do a diverse array of like putting stimuli out there, meaning I talk about it, I put videos on.
You ask questions.
And then I'll prod and ask questions. And then if my questions don't get a response naturally, I'll then maybe ask and force a response.
Okay.
Or just give an example from my perspective, and that might help other people.
That makes a lot of sense.
If you're willing to share something about yourself, it makes people more willing to share about themselves.
Like a dominoes effect.
Yeah.
All right. What's the best way to encourage quieter students to participate without putting them on the spot? That's a good question. There was quiet students in our class.
Yeah. A way I do it is body language. Because if something really resonates with an individual, quiet or not, they will you're not going to catch that on audio, but they will shake their head so the audio catches it. But yeah, so they'll do something with their body to denote that they relate to the topic, whether they, like if I talk about something and then they'll make like a face of like, I'm skeptical or disgusted or whatever. And then if I see that, I'll go, well, why did you make that face?
Like a reaction.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, if they react to it, I'll typically bring that out. Or depending on the topic, and if it comes to my knowledge, if I know that a student has talked about it before, like if they talked about it in their homework or something.
Okay.
But that's iffy because homework might be more, they might feel they can share in their homework because it's only me seeing it.
Yeah.
So
Might be
that's a tough one. I have to make sure it's a general understanding.
Yeah. Invasion of privacy.
Well, that there's probably reasons that like the quiet student is willing to open up in homework as opposed to open up in class. In part, probably because of judgment, that they might feel that they're going to be judged for their answer.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. How do you use real world examples of psychology experiments to make the material more relatable?
I just, I guess for me that was practicing myself doing that. That when I read scientific articles, that's how I learned them, is trying to attach it to myself.
Okay.
But certain ones like the shock experiment, the Milgram shock experiment, where most people listen to that experiment and think, I wouldn't give an electric shock that would kill someone. And most people think that they wouldn't, which is the point of the experiment, is that when you walked in the classroom today, you thought that you were going to be a good person. When you walk out of that classroom, you should be skeptical about the notion of what being a good person is. Because these people thought that they were good people, but these were people like just having a regular day. Like, hey, you want to come do an experiment? And then 30 minutes later, they're electrocuting someone to death. And it's like...
It's kind of fucked up.
It is fucked up. And that's the point, is like you really don't know what you're capable of doing until you're in that situation. And even in that situation, you're still going to find out what you're capable of doing, whether you like it or not. Yeah. And so I try to emphasize that, like, things like that, or maybe things for memory, or things like I try to talk about things that relate to a young adult experience, like depression.
Like triggering.
I'm kind of triggering their sense of self-preservation, because I know that people will try to do things that make them feel good, and that they also think society views as good. So, yeah, but also that, like, young adults suffer with mental health issues. So if I talk about depression, that's going to get some ears perked up.
Yeah, some people agreeing with you.
Yeah, or just wanting to know more. That, like, when I tell them that your brain wants to stay depressed because that is the function of depression, that might resonate with some people to be like, oh, so when I want to be happy, my brain doesn't want me to be happy, so I have to actually really try to be happy. Rather than thinking, oh, depression, I'm just fucked. I'm just going to be sad forever.
Yeah, that's true. For them. All right. What role does group discussion play in your classes, and how do you keep it productive?
Mostly the openness of sharing. That the more that other individuals can see that these problems relate to their peers, that if their peers are suffering from these issues and their peers are willing to talk about it, it kind of breaks down taboo aspects of it. That it might be, and in a lot of ways it is taboo to talk about in certain contexts your emotions. Like it might not be always, or wouldn't that go against like social norms?
In some ways, yeah. I mean, like here in tech, like okay, as an example, that like watch, I can give two examples. They'll be quick. One example is the social norm of profanity.
Mm-hmm.
That like it might not, people might view my use of profanity as abnormal.
Mm-hmm.
But in context, it's not like y'all don't use profanity in y'all's everyday life anyway.
That's true.
That like I'm not presenting material that that's not novel material. Me saying whatever profanity, I don't know how much, whatever profanity that I use, and even as specific profanity, I would be able to put, I'm not a gambling man, but if I did gamble, I would bet money that most of my students could not remember me saying a gendered use of profanity, like using the B word or using the D word or now the F word. Sure, I'm sure my students will remember me popping the F bomb. But then another example is that here in Texas, people are really how to put it.
Are you respectful?
Old-fashioned.
Old-fashioned.
That people think it's a risk. If I was to even talk about gender or sexuality, if I was in high school, they would call me a groomer. In college, I can talk. Some people in Texas would call me a groomer simply by talking about that stuff, by saying stuff that, and this is something that I know students struggle with, is that when female students want to emotionally express themselves, they feel that anger is not acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
That is a gendered issue. That it is that men are allowed to be angry, but women are not. Now, in certain situations, people might hear me go, I'm talking about gender. That's bad. You shouldn't be talking. Gender isn't, there's only two genders and that's it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how those are real implications and those implications matter.
Yeah.
Hopefully that fit into the subtext of the question. Wait, what was the question again?
It was what role does group discussion play in your classes?
Okay, that. So the idea that when other people talk about these things, and that I have a female student talk about an anger issue,
Yeah.
then it lets other students, female or not, that's something that they are also dealing with.
Yeah, related.
Yeah, and that's what group discussion is helpful. And also,
So like whenever you're talking about like anime, and then bro over here would talk about a show like Dragon Balls, and then the other guy behind him would be like jumps in
yeah,
and agrees with him, and then there's like a domino effect of all of us agreeing on the
Yeah.
same anime show.
and that domino effect also led to the realization that like we're all having these experiences, but these experiences feel unique and individual.
Yeah.
Because look, my anime references this year are flopping. I do not have a lot of anime watchers. Like, I have one class that I for sure have a Naruto watcher, and she's watched all of it. But I can't talk about my Naruto references to one student. That's gonna flop.
Yeah.
So I have to think of other cultural references that like are more. SpongeBob tends to work there.
Yeah.
If I make a SpongeBob reference, that tends to hit. It tends to be. He tends to still be culturally relevant.
No, that makes
20 years later.
I said that bro's like, when did he come out? In the 90s? 98?
Like in the 2000s, yeah.
2000s?
Yeah.
And
I remember watching the animation change.
Oh my goodness, the animation was horrible back then.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so have you found any specific techniques like storytelling or visuals that really sparked student interest?
Kind of videos do help a lot, and I think that's going to be a cultural benefit. But also, I use videos specifically because that is, in part, how I absorb a lot of content, anyways. That like, but yeah, showing videos, I think sometimes reading articles help because what I like to think is hopefully when students watch me look something up, like that I'm demonstrating how to do research.
Yeah.
They might not see that, and I mean, did you feel like you picked that up when you watched me look something up?
I was watching you look everything up. I'm like,
Yeah. But and so maybe I should make that more apparent that like when you see me looking it up, what I want y'all to see is that that's what research looks like. That when I talk about research, you might think that I'm talking about going into a lab, getting participants, and then studying them. But research is that when I tell you something, you go, I need to verify that. Then you go and look it up and verify it. And if I was lying to you, that's research. But even if you found out it was true, that's still research because you then recreated it and validated that. And so that's part of why, like, the things that I like, if I say something, I will then try to validate it or back it up with either a study. Now, the hard part is you'll have to. I try to emphasize that if I'm going to say something that's my opinion, I'll say it's my opinion. But for anything else that I'm talking about, it's a research study. Now, in part, that's because I engaged what's called intellectualization, which is a defense mechanism for making everything objective so that it's easier to deal with. And that might help for some students. It helped for me, but it might not help for others.
It's different in our own little way.
Yeah.
All right.
But I think the variety of methods of which I put the information to students, I think is, I think that's a benefit. Yeah.
I think you need to work on like your like current timeline of like connections to like what you're researching, because like the videos you're showing, they're pretty old.
Yeah, and I am, and that is and that is kind of something that I'm glad that the internet exists for, because I just like this week a video came out about online safety, and it was like I watched when it came out, like I watched it get released on YouTube, and so I brought it in the next day. And it was a video about a guy creating a fake TikTok account to mimic a 13-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm.
Very relevant to what's happening right now.
Yeah.
And especially that we were talking about positive and negative reinforcement, and that when you watch a video, the algorithm says, oh, you must have really liked that video because you watched all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you swiped through, it goes, you didn't like that, so I won't keep showing you that. But then what they found was that a lot of bad shit was being watched. That when people watch videos about depression, it tends to grab all their attention. So then the algorithm thinks that they want to watch more depression content. Now, what do you think that does to a person's brain when they sit there for 3 hours and watch people talk about fucking suicide and not leaving their bedroom and how everything's miserable?
That's how TikTok does it. They run your, like, let's say you like the video, comment on the video, and all of a sudden you close the app, open it up. You have all these videos relating to what you were just watching.
Yep. And you maybe watched one video because you were curious. You might not have even actually liked the stuff. Like, yeah, and so that's a problem because, like, in the context of reinforcers, that it's important to be aware that these social media companies are very much aware of how we engage in our behavior. And they're trying to use that against us in a handful of ways.
Yeah.
And I mean against us literally. Like, it's not, if they're trying to make us feel sad, that's not good. Like, you wouldn't hang out with a friend that always made you feel sad, would you? You would be like, dude, get it to get like.
Yeah, like, bro, get your shit together.
Yeah, you would talk. You would try to change that punishing behavior of talking sad and talking down. And yet social media is like, no, keep it up. Go ahead, be sad, be angry, be sad. We don't care. We just want money.
Yeah. Let's see, number 7. I only got 3 more questions left.
Sure.
How do you handle it when students seem disengaged or distracted during a lesson? Whenever, like, a kid's on their phone, or when they're not looking at you, or if they're just asleep, how would you handle that situation?
I mean, I kind of don't.
You kind of don't.
I don't. I mean, even you could probably even given that answer that I don't. I mean, because you've seen how I act in the class, and I don't necessarily. And I'll simplify this by even giving an answer that a grad school professor said to us, to his students. I don't care if a student comes to my class and falls asleep because they made it here. That in their life, whatever they're going through, they're tired, they got shit going on, they're bad family life, whatever, but that they made it to my classroom, and that whatever they're going through, they still made it there. I'm okay with that. And if you fall asleep in my class, well, that's whatever. So to the engagement part, that, like, yeah, I would want students to be more engaged, but as a psychology professor, I know I can't force engagement.
Yeah.
Your brain the brain is a narcissist, and the brain will do what it wants to do. So if students come in here and their brain goes, I'm not feeling it today, they'll probably just get on their phone, play video games. I know I had to, but the thing is like, the hard part is trying to differentiate that when a student is on their phone, that they're actually disengaged. Because that's a risky gamble to say that if I have a student who's on a laptop that, like, and I'll give the example of the student that was playing video games on his laptop, that he was playing video games, and he openly talked about it. He said he was playing Terraria or some shit. But he would still answer. He would still contribute to the conversation. So the idea of, like, what does the look of a disengaged student might be that they look disengaged, but they are actually, they do care at some level. Because I've even had a student straight up say that she comes to my class because her home life sucks. That when she's at home, she has to be a fucking nanny. She's got to take care of her siblings, which isn't her responsibility, but she feels that it is. Kind of a common thread for a lot of handful of students I have. It's not your fault that you have siblings. That means you shouldn't have to take care of them. But nice, you can't. That's a mean thing to say to people that feel that they attach to family. But either way. But yeah, if she makes it here and she just wants to be here and feel safe and be in a safe environment. And then every so often, she wants to contribute to the conversation. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
If my students want to come in here and they feel safe enough to go on their phone,
Yeah.
I take that as now I don't know that every teacher would, but I take that as a compliment. You wanted to be here. I treat y'all as adults. If you don't want to be here, you don't have to fucking be here.
Yeah.
You can throw your money at the college. We'll take the money, and you can go do whatever else you want to do with that. You're an adult.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. I'm like, bro, aren't you like 20 something?
Yeah,
If
if
you're on
you
your phone, I mean, like, that's on you.
and you pay. I mean, yeah, you paid the money to be here. If you want to
Yeah.
be on your phone and ignore the information that I had to convey to you. That also, I would die hard on a hill to say that psychology is going to be useful in every field you get.
Yeah.
So if you think that this isn't useful information, well, when you missed the chapter on motivation and you're a boss and you're a manager and you're trying to get your coworkers, your employees to fucking do work, and you missed the me talking about motivation and roles and all that, and then you can look at your because are you trying to be in a position of power? Not maybe directly, but like,
Yeah.
because like I'm in a position of power, not like directly, but I didn't choose to be a teacher because I want power. I just know that there comes power with it. And with that power, you have to know how to engage with people and motivate
Yeah.
people. Like, sure, it might be easier to fire someone, but economically it's not.
Yeah.
Economically, you got to hire someone, train them, make sure that they're good, keep them on. If you talk to somebody who doesn't care about their job, wouldn't it just be easier to motivate them, to get them to do it, rather than just fire them? So, and that's kind of my logic, is like, I'm not gonna like, the most I will put my foot down is like if students are being disruptive.
Yeah.
And that really doesn't happen that much.
Well, if they're talking too loud or, you know.
And that really doesn't happen that much. Like,
Yeah.
I've had one class where I had to put my foot down, and I only did it once, and they really actually quit talking because another student told them to be quiet. And even now, that was funny because it was,
That's kind of embarrassing.
well, they were kind of, and that's why they kind of deflected of like looking at the person that shushed them, like, come on, like, grow up. And it's like, y'all grow up. Like, y'all are adults. I'm going to treat you as such. And with that, you should respect other adults.
Yeah.
So long story short, you're adults, and I'm going to treat you like that. If you want to come to my class and you want to disengage, that is your
choice.
problem. Now, it does become my problem if they're not doing work.
Yeah.
Like, if they're failing the class, that does become my problem. And then that is when I directly engage with them. Like, hey, what's going on? Like, why are you just, like, not doing anything?
Yeah.
Which typically, there's something going on in their life when that's happening. Most of the time, they're not apathetic because they want to be. They're apathetic because they kind of have to be,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
All right, let's see. Number 8. What's these are simple questions too. I looked up
Simple.
on the app where you know Grok.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I use Grok. It's a new app now, and I looked up like what questions can you ask a psychology teacher about getting students involved, and it just gave me like these simple questions. And I'm like, all right, can you give me more complex questions? And I looked at them all like, nah, I ain't putting those on here. No, they had all these words that I don't know, and I'm like, All right, so what's your go-to method for connecting psychological concepts to students' everyday lives?
Just doing it how I did it for myself. Just taking and now I think a part of a benefit of, and I actually think about this a lot because I think I had a unique experience as a millennial that I kind of resonate a lot with Generation Z.
How old are you?
Huh?
How old are you?
I'm 34.
You're 34?
33, 34.
Oh, so you can relate to people in like their 20s. Like
Yeah,
late
and I
20s.
can even relate into the idea of like when I was a freshman in college, I had a pretty lonely experience. So like similar to kind of like COVID, that my formative intellect, like my formative years of what I thought it meant to be as an adult, a young adult, like a young human, that like a lot of y'all's generation had to like deal with what it all these thoughts and ideas and like issues and feelings, and then you get locked into your house for a year because of COVID, whether you liked it or not. And so like I really resonate with that like when I went to college, and that was my choice, I wasn't forced to, but I resonate with the idea that my freshman year I had to go through a lot of like the loneliness, because like I went to college by myself. I had a lot of my friends go to universities and they went together. I went to a university where I was just alone. So I had to learn how to make friends. I didn't have to learn how to, I had a friend group that I just kind of like evolved into, and I never really had to, I just had to adapt. I didn't have to learn to make friends. Now I had to learn how to make friends, and that's fucking tough.
It's harder now.
It's hard now, yeah. And it's a lot harder now. And like even like a good benefit for me was like eventually I just found someone in the class that we clicked and we just started hanging out. And that kind of is how it happens in life. Like when you get older, you get to choose your friends. But yeah, that like I remember like being stuck on YouTube and watching videos that like led me down emotional rabbit holes that like weren't good for me, which I know Gen Z does. It's endemic in the culture of Gen Z. So like I resonate with that, because it's hard to, but it's also hard to avoid. It's hard to like be so attached to something like social, like our phones, and it not also drive us crazy. It's a hard dynamic to, but I resonate with that, and so that helps me relate to the average younger, both the average student, because I'm aware of modern problems. Like it's not beyond me. Probably the most relatable thing that happened to me was when I talked about how in social media that I said a comment of like y'all's generation has to actually look up violent stuff on the internet. To which, what do you think about that comment?
What do you mean? Like look up violent.
Like yeah, like that, and that already doesn't track because that's not true in your brain. You already know that's not true in your brain. That like you can go on Twitter or Instagram and see some violent shit and you didn't even ask for it. That's what I mean is like in my generation, I thought that accessing violent material was pretty easy because you just had to go to a website like eFucked Live Leak. Live Leak still exists, I think. The student was just telling me that it still exists.
There's a new one now, Crude Plug.
Yeah, so, but you can also just go onto Twitter and see videos of fucking people getting bombed with drones. Or what one student said, February 26th. Does that ring any bell to you?
February 26th was, I don't know what that was.
Apparently, that's the day the Instagram firewall got broken. So the February 26th was the day where Instagram had a whole bunch of violent material pop off because it wasn't being censored. So for like 24 hours, it wasn't being censored. So people like got videos of fucking people getting killed or like car crashes and people dying in it and shit. Which Instagram was censoring, and that was like kind of a realization that like that shit always has been adding, but Instagram blocks it so you don't see it. But that block got taken away, so people saw that shit. But no, just I try to connect my own personal experiences with modern problems that I know students are having problems with because they're modern. But also some of them aren't modern. Like some situations, all students deal with because you're human. So in that same vein.
All right. Let me get to, is this okay? Yeah, it's okay. All right. Are there any creative assignments or exercises you've tried that really got students excited to learn? I don't think you ever did like things like that would put everyone together.
No, because again, like and the problem is I don't like doing that, but every time I have done it, students seem to like it. And that's a personal issue I have to get over. Because I just don't think in terms of activities like that. Not that there's anything wrong with it, I just don't think of like that. But that's also why I try to, I just bring modern references, and I try to get students to that's why I try to engage students and then have them give a reference that when there's like a collective a collective grumble of like agreeance
that thing happens, I'll tend to like look it up. Like, oh, as an example, I looked up the games with the most popular player count, video games with most player count, to which it was PUBG, which a student accurately guessed. I was surprised by that.
That's good. I hate that.
Call of Duty, and then Musical Magical Monsters. Have you heard of that? That's the third most popular game according to Wikipedia of concurrent player count, and it's literally a game where you make it's like Animal Crossing but music and monsters. And like half of the students in the class had heard about it, and I was like, I've beaten over 300 video games. I've never fucking heard of magical music monsters, and it's been around for 10 years.
Oh my
So like
God.
some of these students weren't even born when the fucking game was created, and like they had heard about it. So yeah, so just like keeping an, I think to a simple answer is keeping an open mind. That like when students tell me something, I'm willing to research it and engage with it, and then see why. And part of it is this my personal belief of there's no such thing as a coincidence, which is also Freud's personal belief. But it's not a coincidence that when I asked about popular video games that people play, that there would be games that they are aware of that I am not aware of, and that's because of the demographics of gaming. Mostly women play mobile games. I don't play. Candy Crush is the only mobile game I play. A few other ones, but Candy Crush is the big one.
Yeah.
I would never play Call of Duty on mobile. That is fucking insane. But I had a student say she mostly plays on mobile, on her phone. She plays Call of Duty on her phone, and I was like, that's wild.
I have it on my phone, and whenever I play it by myself on squads. I could win every game on battle royales. I'm like, bro, how do
Are they just like garbage? Are they like?
they're all garbage on there. Every single one. I could run through a.
I bet it's
four-man
because they
team.
are actually kids too. That's probably a good
It could
answer.
be kids, or like they could be like people that just don't know how. They're just playing for fun. I'm just in there trying to fucking kill
Well, that's a
people.
good point too. Yeah, because no, the reason I would not play Call of Duty on the phone is because I would get too competitive and too angry about
Yeah, I've seen there's
and that just using my hand on my no.
I
My hands are too big to do that anyway.
Yeah,
That's
controller. But yeah, those are all the questions.
But yeah. No, and I'm also genuinely interested, and I think that also carries over. That like I'm not just asking students because I just for the sake of it. I am asking because I'm genuinely interested. And every time I get more information, each class that I get more information from,
You can use it.
the next class is the future that's coming in. So
Yeah.
if I get more information about the future that's coming in, that's less guesswork I have to do for references that won't land. Like in this semester, my Naruto references aren't landing, so I got to find SpongeBob references or cultural references.
Yeah.
Memes tend to be doing pretty good right now for cultural references. But yeah.
You need to keep knowing the trends.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm contemplating changing the homework and contemplating making the homework all personal application, but making students give me media references about each chapter in the homework, which will help me because then I can start looking at these like popular television shows that are like culturally relevant. Like I don't know, like what's a television show you think most of your generation has seen?
Most of my generation, I'll have to look at my Netflix account.
See, that's interesting. That
Most of us watch Netflix.
you think so?
Yeah, because most of the shows, like some of the good shows, are all on Netflix.
Fuck, I don't have Netflix. Maybe that's what I need to do.
Whenever you look at Prime Video, Hulu, they don't really have good shows. They have like
Because Riverdale's on the student. Was that on Netflix?
Riverdale was on, I think, on Netflix. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let me end the interview right there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.